Hey everybody, Tom here, and today in this video I want to teach you how to make one of my larger minis boxes. Now, this is a box I designed specifically to fit inside of this small expansion. So it's kind of weird. Large minis box goes in the small expansion. It makes sense, just trust me. And what I wanted to say is that I specifically designed this box for Unmatched, so that's the example I'm going to be using. But it's totally possible that you got to this video a different way because maybe I've designed a different box in the future at some point. So let me just show you what it is that I want to teach you how to make. Essentially, for the game Unmatched, there were just so many minis, and I wanted a good way to store them. And so this is the box here. You can kind of see the outside here. All right. And we can just take the lid off. And, sorry, it's a DIY, so it's not going to be perfect. But basically, this box is going to hold your minis like this. And I've made it so that it's customizable, so you can do different types of things with how it looks in the background. So we'll talk more about that later. But this specific minis box here has 3 different levels. I'm going to call these middle things risers. And yeah, this is the box that I'm going to teach you how to make. Now, in order to make this box, you're going to need a couple of things. The first thing you're going to need is you're going to need to print off the pages for this. Now, a couple of ways to access this. These files are on boardgamegeek.com, but they're most easily accessed, I believe, through my website, tomteachesgames.com. So if you go to tomteachesgames.com, there's a whole do-it-yourself storage solution area, and you can get to Board Game Geek through those, so you can just browse what I've got. But basically, once you get there, you open up the file, you're going to go ahead and print it off. Now, depending on the project, there's going to be different pages, but basically, what you're going to do once you have these printed, oh, and I should tell you, I just printed this on cheap cardstock. Like, I just went to Walmart, whichever box was cheapest, or, you know, thing of paper, block, what do they call it? Ream of paper. That was the cheapest cardstock, that's what I buy. I don't buy anything fancier, though I'm sure you could get something thicker. But basically, I just printed this colored, one-sided for all of the pages. All of my designs are designed to fit on a 8.5 by 11 paper, and specifically because of the size of this box that was semi-problematic, but I'll talk about that more later. But basically, your file is going to have a lid, a base, it's going to have these striped pages. Those are going to be for the risers, and in this example I have 2 pages of that. And then also, depending on the game, you might have tabs like this that can help you organize and customize your box to however you want it to be. So you're going to want to print all of those pages off before we get going. And then, for this project, you really only need a pair of scissors and some tape. But if you have a paper cutter, that's going to be nice. And if you have just a normal cutting board, a ruler, and a butter knife, it's going to help one of the steps on this project be a little bit easier. It's not required, but it'll make things a lot nicer. So if you want, you can go ahead and take a second, pause the video, get your things printed out, gather your supplies, and what we're going to do to start off is we're going to make the base and the lid. They're basically the exact same template. You can see they're super duper similar. Once you get your stuff together, come back and let's go ahead and start with the base and the lid of this box. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I usually just start with the lid or with the base so that I have something to work into, but whatever you want to do. Now, first thing we need to do is we need to cut out the whole outside border. Now, here's the thing. Small secret. I actually use Microsoft Word for all of my templates, and so it kind of puts some restrictions. I have to get a little creative sometime. I specifically mention this because Word takes into account that a lot of printers won't print all the way to the edge. And so on this design, you're gonna notice that there's a whole outside border of this, but we're gonna need most of this paper. So the first step you gotta do is look around the outside shape of the box and see if there are any dotted lines that go all the way through. So for example, we're gonna need basically this whole page, except I have one dotted line right here that goes all the way through. There are other dotted lines, but they don't go all the way through. The only cut we need on this particular project is just to cut right here. And same thing on the lid right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the paper cutter to make those cuts. You could of course use scissors or whatever, but I'm going to do that off screen because there's a tripod right here, and using the paper cutter, it doesn't work. So I'm going to go ahead and get those cut, and you should get yours cut too, and then come back. Alright, so when you're done, your project's going to look like this-ish. You know, again, depending on which one you're doing. Next, what we're going to do is we need to make 4 cuts. Now, like I said, in a perfect world, these lines would go all the way where I want them to go, but because this project is so big, it's just not possible. There are going to be 4 dotted lines that don't go all the way through that you want to take a look for. So we got one here, one here, one here, one here. And basically, I just need you to imagine that that dotted line goes to the edge of the paper, and that's where you're going to cut. So we're just going to do 4 cuts, one on each of those dotted lines, bringing it all the way to the edge of the paper. Now, most of my projects are not this simple. This is one of the most simple ones that I've got. They're usually more complicated because, assuming people are just using this weak cardstock, I try to add multiple layers to the sides of the boxes to make them strong. But this paper is big enough that just isn't really possible. So with that in mind, I bet you probably already know how to do this. Okay, those are the only cuts you need to make, but I'm going to show you a couple more cuts that are going to make this project even easier. And here, I'm going to move this out of the way. I'll just do that one off camera. Next cuts are going to be almost parallel to the ones that we just made. So here we've got this cut. I'm going to come to the other side of this small rectangle, and I'm going to cut it at a slight angle. And I'm trying to imagine that that solid line goes right here. And I'm just going to cut at a slight angle like this. We're going to be wrapping this part over this part. So if we don't cut that angle, it's just going to be a little bit obnoxious. And so again, up here, almost parallel to that other line, I'm just going to go ahead and do a slight angle cut like that. Over here, almost parallel. Nice thing on this side is that those solid lines do go all the way through. And same thing right here. Okay, now we're going to do 4 more cuts that are for a really similar purpose. It just helps with the folding. So if you look here along the bottom, there's a long rectangle and same thing up here. We're going to turn those into long trapezoids. So basically, I'm just going to cut a small triangle like that. Okay, and we're just going to do that all the way around on those 4 same sides. Oops. Okay, we'll go ahead and cut this one. And these angles, they don't need to be precise. They just help with the folding part of things. So don't go crazy with it. Okay, so now we've got our 4 cuts made. We're going to do our folding. Basically, every solid line is going to be a folding line. And it might feel like you probably want to keep this face up as you fold, but I've found that this is actually easier to fold if you go face down, which sounds counterintuitive, but a couple of things. First of all, your cuts help you know where those fold lines are. And second of all, as you fold, you're going to be able to see the line where you need to cut or where you need to fold better than, like if we were going this way, you wouldn't really know exactly where to fold. You do it however you want, but I think that going upside down is easiest. So what I'm going to do is let's start with these wings that we just cut. I'm just going to take it and fold it until I see just a hint of solid line right there, and I'm going to crease it with my thumb. Okay, I'm going to do that with all 4 of these. There's my solid line right there. And remember, we cut that at an angle, so that's not going to be level up that way. And this one right here. And this one right here. Okay? So those are some of the folds. Now let's go ahead and fold here. So right where those wings are, we're just going to fold that down. Keep an eye out for that solid line. And let's go ahead and crease it. Now I'm going to be showing you a trick for creases later on with the butter knife. And I'll talk about why I don't really use that for this part, but you're welcome to do that if you know the trick already. But yeah, I just like to just use those cuts and then my fingers and go ahead like that. Next, on these 2 sides, there are going to be 2 folds. So one is going to go across the bottom of those triangles we cut out. So I'm just using my fingers and peeling it down until I see a hint of that solid line. Give it kind of like an initial crease, and then I like to finish it up with my thumb with a good crease there. Then I keep pulling it like that and crease it. Okay, we'll do the same thing on this side. I just use my fingers until I see the solid line, and then I kind of push it down like that-ish. Sure. It does not need to be perfect. I like to think I'm the Bob Ross of board game boxes, and I've tried to make my designs pretty foolproof. There's not a lot of mistakes you can make. You just roll with it, you know? Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and put this down and crease it like that. And now all of the solid lines have creases. Now it's time to tape it, and I'm guessing you might already know what's about to happen because this design is so simple. But let me give you some tips along the way. Okay, what I like to do is start at one corner. We're going to fold this up so that the wing's on the inside. We're going to wrap the other side up and around. And I just like to use my finger to make sure that this corner isn't too far in and not too far out. I just like to feel it out with my finger, make sure it's nice and level. And when it's nice and level and this is wrapped around, I just pinch it really close to the corner. When it's right where I want it to be, maybe like that. Pinch it in the corner, grab a small piece of tape, and we're going to tape it in a way that we hit all 3 layers. Let me show you where that is. So we got 1, 2, 3 layers, all hit with that one piece of tape. Now let's go around to the other corner. Same thing. Put it in, wrap it around, make sure it feels good on your finger, that it's nice and angular. Pinch it really close to the corner so that you can still get the tape in on the 3 layers, like that. There you go. Now this middle part is probably jutting out, so what I like to do is just pinch it nice and closed as best as I can, and then get a long piece of tape. And starting at the top, oh, sorry, I just barely worked out, so I'm a little, my body's shakier than it should be. So if you've noticed, I'm just tired. Okay, and there's one side. Now you can see mine's kind of bowing out a little bit. No big deal, it's just paper. So you just pinch it down, make sure your corners look good. There you go. Okay, let's do the same thing on this side. Wrap it around, make sure you feel that corner, that it feels good. Pinch some tape on the 3 layers like that. And then last one, put it in, pinch, make sure the corner feels good. And then small piece of tape to get the 3 parts together. That's bowing out a little bit, so I'm just going to pinch it in. Get a long piece of tape, start at the top, and then get it down. And if the side's bowing, just make sure you recrease it like that. Okay, there is the base of the box. Now the lid of the box is the exact same template. It's just a teensy tiny bit bigger so that it fits, that it can come on and off of the base better. I'm going to go ahead and make this off camera. And when I come back, what we'll do is we will work on the risers, which are going to be these striped pages. Okay, so for this next part of the project, we're going to be making these 3 risers, and this is where you can start to customize. Right now, there are few enough figures, sorry, those are out of place. There are few enough figures that I really like to have this logo showing in the middle, but it's entirely possible that maybe by the time you're making this, that there's enough figures that you don't want that logo in the middle because you want space. So one thing you're going to want to decide is, do you want 3 blank risers? Do you want one with the logo? Where do you want the logo? Do you want it on the top? You can decide all of that crap as we're going. So with that said, again, for this particular project, there are 2 pages worth of risers, and the reason for that is there's 2 blank on this one, another blank on this one, and one with a logo on that one. So you can do, obviously, the 2 blank ones, and then you could do either the blank one or the logo. It doesn't matter. But basically, as you look at these stripes, most of the lines are solid, but you're going to see some dotted lines. The dotted lines are where we need to cut, and once again, you will see that printing doesn't go all the way to the top or bottom just because of the nature of printers. So what you're going to want to do, first of all, is go ahead, use your paper cutter or your scissors, and cut on those dotted lines. And once you have all 3 cut, just decide which ones you want. Like I said, I really like, for now, until the next expansion comes out, I'm going to do this one and the 2 blank ones, and then I'm probably also going to make the other one as I go and just store it somewhere. And since I use tape on all of my projects, I'm just going to rip out that middle section and replace it with the blank one when the time comes. But that's what I'm going to do for this. Now, this is the part that I like to use the butter knife trick for. Now, this is just going to help you with your creases. The reason I didn't use it on the other parts is I think I usually use this for 2 things. Number one, if the fold needs to go all the way from top to bottom of the paper. That doesn't always happen on those boxes because they usually stop short of the top or the bottom on those folds. The other reason is this is really nice when you have 2 folds that need to go close together. If you just fold this part by hand, usually you're going to end up rolling inside of here and it's going to weaken the side. So it's just a little bit obnoxious. But here's the trick. And I know that there are fancy tools you can buy. I just try to keep everything at home, do-it-yourself friendly. We're just going to use this part. So butter knives usually have a little tiny serration right here. we're going to use this part of the knife right here that's not pokey at all. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to line up that ruler with one of those lines. You can see there are 4 solid lines. Those are folding lines, and what we're going to do is we're going to run that knife down just like that. And I'm just pushing, like the reason I have the cutting board is to make it easier to push harder without damaging your table, because you do want to push kind of hard. Okay, so you're just going to go ahead and use your ruler, use that back end of the butter knife to crease the pages. Now I've tried to use a pizza cutter, that was one idea that I had, but I found that the rolling nature gave me a lot less control, and I was always going away from the ruler, so I just like the butter knife. Okay, so that's pretty much it. You're going to go ahead and score lines on all of those papers, and I will just do that off camera and go ahead and do that and come on right back. Okay, at this point I have all of them. I don't know if you can see, but they're all scored. Can you see it? Oh, I'm still a little shaky. I might need some sugar in my body. Now, we already talked about how one customization you can make is to use the logo or not. Great. Another one, this sounds really simple, is you can decide if you want these lines to be showing or not showing. I'm going to choose to let them be showing because of the tabs I'm going to be using, but you may want them invisible. So if you don't want the line showing, you're going to want to fold it this way so that when it's folded, the line's hidden. But like I said, because of the nature of how I'm doing my box, I don't mind the lines being shown. In fact, I think they kind of make it look a little nicer. So what I'm just going to do is use those creases. Pretty straightforward. Oh, sorry for bumping the camera. Those creases are going to be really nice. I basically just fold and use my thumb to just give a final crease, pull it, and it'll pretty much self-crease because of the butter knife trick. And we're going to have 4 folds in here like that. Okay, super simple. Again, if you want the lines hidden, just go the other way. Now, on the 2 ends, you're going to see, so the middle is how wide this riser is going to be. One end is going to be that exact same width, and the other end is going to be shorter. So as you're folding this into a rectangle, really straightforward, keep the short end on the outside, because that's going to give you some taping space. And you just want to make sure that that inside goes right there with the edge. Pinch it with your fingers, and we'll just grab some tape and tape it down just like that. I like to get both ends down, and then I hit the middle. So tape, tape, and then I usually kind of stick my finger in there just to help with the structure of the middle, and go like that. Doesn't need to be pretty. And yeah, so there's one of our risers. Go ahead and do that same thing with all 3. Okay, I've got my 3 folded. Now, this is a part where you could do some glue and use glue. Great. I don't love using glue on these projects because I feel like they come up, but also I really like that the tape is adjustable. And like especially I said in that middle one, I do plan after the next 1 or 2 expansions come out to just rip out that middle one and replace it with a blank one so that I feel good about putting minis in that middle section. So let me help you get the risers to the right place, and then I want to talk about one adjustment I'm making to this one that I've noticed to fix something that annoys me. All right, so my recommendation is to always start with the top one, because you can see I have space for the bases here at the bottom, first part of the middle, second part of the middle, and there should not really be any space up there at the top. And so what I like to do is I just take 3 rolled pieces of tape, and I just put those on there like that. Now, it's tape, right? So if you're rolling your tape, if you put it on the tape that you've already laid down, it'll make it easier to come off and go on without ripping your riser. So that's just an idea. Or if you really want to make sure that it doesn't come off, maybe go in between your pieces of tape. Whatever. All right. So first riser needs to go flush with the top, as flush as possible. And so I just kind of lay it in there. And once it's all the way up at the top, squeeze it. You just kind of put some pressure, and if you just do a couple of quick pokes, you won't be bending the sides or damaging the structure of that riser. Okay, now let's get some tape on this middle, and I'll give you a tip for that. Let's see, I should have pre-rolled this tape. This is not that exciting to watch. But I got this idea just from my little experience with tile laying. we want to make sure that the spacing is right because you really want your minis to fit in snugly. So here's my advice. Take 2 or 3 of the bases. I mean, again, depending on the project, maybe you just need to lay the mini in there if there are no bases. But in this example, we have bases. And what we're going to do is, I'm going to kind of hold this. It gets a little awkward at first. Keep it off of the base. And we're going to use these little things as spacers. And once you feel like those are nice and spaced, that'll keep your minis nice and snug. If I could do this right on camera, sorry. In theory, it's not that hard. And you're just going to snug it up using those spacers. Again, you could have a third one in the middle. And once it is right where you like it, go ahead and just make sure that it's there. And now you can just test it out. These will be just a little bit, I think it should be pretty good. If you test it out, they should fit nice and snug. Depending on how good you did, you might feel a little bit of pressure, which is the perfect one. This one's a little loose, but that's okay because it'll still hold Alice there in place. And then, I'm going to need that for the bottom one. Now, here's one other way to customize. If you see here in this example, for example, some of these minis, King Arthur's cape is like that. It keeps him from going into the insert very well. He rides high and he doesn't lay in it very nicely. Same problem with Bigfoot. Take a look at Bigfoot. There's no, this is the only section that he could really sit down. So the way that I have been putting Bigfoot and King Arthur in here is upside down like this, which is sad because you want them to look at you and smile when you open the box. So what I wanted to do with this new one that I'm making is basically I'm going to estimate their size and I'm going to trim this. Okay, so I'm actually going to just do one cut, but basically I want to be able to put King Arthur on one side and Bigfoot on the other, and I'm going to have the riser right in between. So let's imagine that Bigfoot will fit on that side, King Arthur goes here. It looks like I need to make a cut about right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to push that box flat. I think it was right there. And as straight as I can, I'm just going to go ahead and trim it. Now you could totally avoid this if you want to. Who cares? And if you mess up, print another page. But basically, I think that size is going to be just how I want it. Yeah. And then I'm going to put the 3 raptors right there in the middle. Yeah, that'll be great. Okay. So I probably want to keep them there-ish to help with the size. All right, let's go ahead and probably only need 2 pieces of tape on this one. 1, 2. Okay. And again, this is something you could do in the future. Stick with it as full if you want. You don't have to remake the whole project. I just needed to for my video. And what I'm going to do is grab my spacers. Now you may want 2 extra spacers for the bottom, because remember you're going to need some space for the bases on the bottom as well. So I'm going to lay those there. Lay these here, kind of like wheels of a car-ish if I can. Let's try that maybe. I'm going to take these, and let's just slide it right there. Oh, you may need to just eyeball it, because it's just going to go right in the middle of that space, but eyeball it. Come on, Bigfoot. Something like that. Oh, sure. And it's just tape, so you can just peel it up and put it back on if you need. Yeah, that looks like it'll be good. And those guys won't move so much. Boom, nailed it. Okay, last thing is, you may just want to stick your minis in just like that, and heck, more power to you. You could just keep them however you want, and don't have any assigned space for them. I'm a little bit crazy, and I like having things with a designated spot to go, and so that is where the tabs are going to come into play. Let's get these guys into their bases. But basically, what you could do is you can decide where do you want your minis to fit. You may want to kind of go in alphabetical order, though the reason I didn't do that is because some of them won't fit at the top. For example, King Arthur can't fit at the top. His sword is just a little bit too big. Okay, so anyway, all I did is I just laid them out in the order that I wanted to. And what you can do is you can get these little tabs. And so let's talk about the tabs page now. For the tabs page, I have the name of the expansion that it came from, but I'm going to end up cutting that off. Basically, just go ahead and cut the outline of these shapes. And then, what I like to do once I have this strip cut out is I like to make my folds. Now you can kind of see what this is doing as you look at it like this. And I'm actually going to slightly modify the way I've done this in the past. What I was doing in the past is just laying this in just like this. Something I want to try, and I should have tried it before the video, is what happens if I actually fold this in like this. I think it might stay a little bit better. So if that hooks in and slides down, you can kind of just pinch it underneath. I think I like that idea a little bit, but you do what you want. But my recommendation is before you cut these, let's actually fold all of them. And because we're going all the way across the paper and the folds are really close together, let's use the butter knife trick. So I'm going to go ahead and lay this out like this. And once it's as close as I can get, why am I struggling? We're going to go ahead and crease it. Again, I'm putting quite a bit of pressure on there. Crease it. Okay, and then just so I have space to work, let's go this way. Crease it. And crease it. All right, cool. So once those are all creased, again, you can kind of decide how you want that top fold to be. Basically, once those are creased, I'm going to go ahead and put in the folds now. It's just easier than cutting all of them and then having to fold all of them individually. So I kind of wanted to try going this way and this way for those first two folds. Again, mostly I just want the creases. As I'm placing them in, I just might use my pinching fingers to get that exactly how I want it. And then this one I wanted to go down. And then this last one, I want it to go out like this. Okay, so you kind of get your creases there however you want. Now, you may just do a quick hoodly-hoo like this. And then my last tip is to make it look extra nice-ish. I mean, not that it looks professional, but it is what it is. What I would recommend is taking your scissors, and rather than trying to cut on the line, my recommendation is to actually cut twice, one on each side of the line. Because while I don't mind these lines here, because they are visible on my boxes the way I did this, I don't really want lines side to side. So here's what I mean. I'm going to cut right to the side of this line, and because I'm crazy, I'm going to do that one more time on the other side of this line, just to keep the white space. I really want those rows with a bunch of white space matching. And you can just go ahead and cut all of those. And I probably won't cut these all on camera because, as you can see, I already have these things made. But that's the basic idea, is that once you have your tabs cut, like I said, I think this time I'm going to try going this way. And so I'm just going to go ahead and do one final pinch around. And then I'm going to put my raptors right here. I don't know if this is going to work or not. We're going to find out. Yep, tuck it. And then push that down. Now you could, if you want to, put a piece of tape just to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere, or heck, you could even glue it down. But as expansions come out, I'm anticipating needing to move those things around. So I'm going to actually not tape or glue them. I'm just going to go like that. Raptors are always super tricky to figure out how to lay them. I've found out laying them kind of like this works. Like that. Now, for this design, let me get King Arthur and Bigfoot. They're next. What I've decided to do, because of the way that these are, I'm going to cut off the top part here for Bigfoot. And I don't really want this space right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut on this line. And I'm going to just slide this thing down and tape it on the back side like this. You see what I'm doing? And heck, he's not going to go anywhere, so maybe I do decide to just tape this one on. I don't know. Go ahead and put some tape, and Bigfoot will just go right here. Boom. Okay? And then maybe I want Robert M to go right here. So I'm just going to get him under that lip and keep that under the lip like that. So one reason that you may want instead of going under the ledge, you may want to go over it is just to, I don't know, what was I going to say? I just like, it like bridges that gap in between those two things, but whatever. Lay that guy right there. Anyway, that's the basic idea. You don't need to see me do the rest of this, but that is how you are going to make your minis boxes. And I don't know, I feel like it turns out pretty cool. Once you get the lid on, it should be a pretty tight fit. For better and worse, it might bend your paper just a little bit, but heck, it's a free do-it-yourself project, so who cares? And for reals, these minis don't move that much, especially when they're all lined up in there. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I don't think I mentioned this at the beginning. I do have a smaller version of this miniatures box for the bigger box for Unmatched. You can watch that video. I'll put the link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope that was fun and helpful for you. Have a good day. Happy crafting. Goodbye.